22 through 25. Let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Now look here, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering. You know, it's interesting, by the way, I'm going to talk about the last couple years. I'm going to talk about, some viruses, maybe a little bit, maybe even get slightly political today. But it's funny that sometimes you get to a study and then you have about 5 conversations in a row and you're like, yeah, this needs to be talked about. And but without wavering there, faith without wavering. And it's surprising to me how easy it is to get somebody off track. We were having a staff meeting of some sorts recently. And as a matter of fact, I even brought it up to the church 2 weeks ago. How with my leadership style, it's, if you want to be here, you'll be here. If you won't, you won't. And but our church and my leadership style tends to have people with character come to church. My days of going to people's house and trying to chase them to get them back to church are just over. I don't, me for 10 years, I was doing that. And I remember when we started the church, I was going, which by the way, if I ever, not starting the church again, but if I ever started church again, I'd still do it the same way. Go to people's house, go, and build habits. But, at this point, you would think that somebody who's pastored for 18 years would have this lockdown of when you're supposed to reach out to somebody who misses and when you're not supposed to reach out to somebody when they miss. And I still don't. I probably never will at this point. And, but anyways. But notice that hold fast your profession. That's for each of us. That's for you. That's for me. For he is faithful to the promise. Let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. So in context of verse 25, notice what we're supposed to do here. We're supposed to consider one another, provoke unto love, and provoke to good works. So part of the reason we're meeting, in response to churches closing, I didn't know that there are still churches closed after almost 2 years right now. I did not know that. I was just people are trying to meet. No, there are churches that haven't been open since March of 2000. What year is that? 2000. And they're still having online services and there's still the digital giving. What did I say? 2020. What? 2020. Yeah. And, so, hey, as long as the offering plate can be passed digitally, we'll go ahead and not open the doors, right? I don't know. And, but through one of the videos I saw this week, it was somebody talking about, well, Jesus never commanded us to meet together. Implication means something, but just because Jesus never said that, Jesus talked about the church and he talked about how we're supposed to interact in the church, bring it to the church. How do you have if we're not supposed to meet, what would you all think if all of a sudden, 3 months from now, somebody who's never came to our church comes in and brings up a problem with somebody else in the church who's not part of the church? Wait, no, because he's implying then in chapter 10, Matthew chapter 10, that we're supposed to be meeting. It's all over, but anyways. But look at verse 23, turn 25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting. Now see here, encouraging one another. Now watch, the whole preface of the message are these next 2 lines. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. Now, today I'm not looking to scare anyone. When we talk about any sort of end-time events, this should not be frightening to you. End-time events just means that Jesus' return is nigh. And when I say that, it could be tomorrow, it could be 50 years from now, it could be 100 years from now, it could be 1,000 years from now. So don't worry if you're sitting there, thinking, well, I want to get married first. Chances are you'll probably be fine and get married first, and or whatever thing you're looking forward to. Those of us that pay mortgages, you're thinking, well, the Lord's return to be nice today, because then I have to pay my mortgage next month. So I'm not looking to scare anybody today, but we're going to talk about this. A stage is set for Christ's return. Now, when I say that, there are times all throughout history, I'm going to cover some of them where people thought Jesus was coming, in this time frame. I'm not setting a time. I'm telling you plainly as I show you some of the things I want you to congratulate me by the end of this, because I could have posted videos, I could have posted pictures, all that sorts of neat stuff up here and dragged this thing out for hours. Could have done it, but I didn't. And because I still feel bad about last week and everything that happened there. Judd's disappointment in me, it just dug. And so I just want to encourage you this morning and give you some things to think about. We've used the phrase around here a couple times in the last year. These two words, something's up. And you kind of sense it. You look around and you just know something is going on. Now, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but it doesn't mean that, because I think that when I find something, it's pretty rock solid and it's not a conspiracy. However, I don't come up and talk about them very often. Of course, I'm not highly versed in them, because it's like I was telling Sam the other day. We had a conversation. If I dive too deep into it, I start feeling filthy and helpless. And I don't want to do that. So I don't dive very deep, because there's not much I can do about it other than praying and trying to reach as many people as we can. But bringing Sam back to this, do you mind if I talk about, we had a conversation out in the foyer. Do we call that the foyer here? Sure. We do, okay. Or do the French foyer or whatever, the entrance, whatever. Because I don't understand the mind of a criminal. Now, there's some people that do, even if you're not a criminal. But it was something that was much kind of do you understand criminal minds there? It was somewhat of a light bulb moment for me a few weeks ago out in the hallway. And it was like the missing piece that if you had enough money, how many Lamborghinis did you say?
Let's go by 3.
3. I'm going to say 5. Imagine you had enough money to just go buy 5 Lamborghinis and have them out in your driveway, and it wouldn't even be a dent in your pocketbook, wouldn't even be a dent in your savings account. Imagine then what your life would be like. There is then no longer any satisfaction in a purchase when you can purchase anything you want. I'm like, wait. See, I didn't understand the train of thought. But there's no satisfaction. So then what is there to press forward to? If you're that rich, you can't just go shopping. You can't just go on a vacation. You can't just, you have all this cash, but you don't have the freedom, let's say, that you and I do. And so what that ends up extrapolating itself to is power, control, and sometimes even sick perversions. This is normally where I would probably veer off and start bringing in abortion, Satanism, and things of that nature. And, the fact that we have on video, you can find it online, of people, catching people from Planned Parenthood talking about selling body parts, but yet the person that took the video ends up getting prosecuted, not the person that was actually admitting to selling the body parts. Put 2 and 2 together, and that's the roads I don't like to go down. And but however, something's there. And the Bible talks about spiritual wickedness in high places. And and then you bring up names, and if you want to do that, you can bring up the Gates family, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and come to find out some of those were actually grown up together, friends, and I didn't know that until the last few weeks. Gates parents, Rockefeller parents. And then I was also going to bring a little meme up here that talks about eyes are the windows to the soul, and show you a couple pictures of people's eyes, and that's where we're cutting time out. I'll just bring it up instead of actually bringing things up and talk about that. But in some stuff that I watched this week, Gates talks about population control and how this is a problem in certain countries. And so within 30 seconds of talking about population control, he's also talking about the importance of vaccines. And, that's kind of crazy. And again, by the way, this isn't about vaccines. This isn't about anything. I tend not to trust the same. And so, but although the nuance though is that they believe that a healthier population will eventually bring down the growth curve. And I get that. I'm not presenting it to you out of context. David Rockefeller, in a speech to the UN in 1995, said this, and I can send you the video. This is not something that I read somewhere. I actually went to the video and watched it. He said, "Our window is open, but won't be forever." And he talked about international interdependence. And there's a fact that we depend too much on other people. I had a conversation with somebody years ago, and they said, well, that just couldn't happen in America. I was talking about gun control. Well, this is America. That can't happen. And then I brought up a couple instances where, gun control hurt somebody badly. And it can happen in America. They took a poll, and did you know that right now, 49% of Democrats think that it should be okay to put people who refuse the vaccine in camps? Now, by the way, I'm talking to a church where maybe half of you are. This isn't about whether or not we should do that at all. But however, I'm just talking about a mindset. Almost half of Democrats think people that aren't vaccinated we should be able to put them in camps. They're talking about turning down medical care for them. But yet, if I were to drink alcohol and get cirrhosis of the liver, I can still go to the hospital and still get my liver treated, right? If I go to McDonald's for every meal and supersize it, they're still going to treat me for heart failure when I go to the hospital, right? See, there's something going on that's different in people's mind with this one issue. There's an LA school that made the news in the last couple weeks. They segregated their non-vaccinated, and they were forced outside and sitting on the pavement and having their class while the kids are sitting on the pavement. A little slide for you to encourage you. Do you know that almost a third of Democrats support unvaccinated parents losing custody of their children? Is it up there? Nope, not yet. It's going to be a tough one for them today. There you go. A third of Democrats think that it should be okay for you. That is where we've come to today. How did we get here? Families are being split over a vaccine that is not 100% effective at stopping a virus with better than 99% survival rate. Families are being split. I could take you to a few families, even our church, where this is happening to them right now. Look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 10. And then shall many be offended. Now, if this doesn't describe right now, I don't know what does. And then shall many be offended, see that there? And shall betray one another and shall hate one another. That's where we're at right now. And in context, Matthew 24 is talking about end times. Going back to Matthew chapter 10, says this, verses 21 through 23. And brothers shall deliver up brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. And he shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. And again, this is in context talking about Jews, just to be clear. And when they persecute you in this city, flee to another. Now notice there, Jesus is not asking us to stand in the face of persecution and take it. Oh, it's my turn to be persecuted. No, even he said, flee to another one. Don't stand there and take it. Go somewhere else. And, to be clear, I did a recent sermon and I answered the question, is the vaccine the mark of the beast? Because people are talking about that. And it's emphatically not. It is not. But what you're seeing is you are seeing a stage being set to where all this stuff that the Bible talks about in end times, it's a stage being set up for Christ's return. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. I'm not saying it's next week. It might not be in the next 10 years. But it could be even today. So, but if you don't see a stage being set, well, and that's kind of the point of the sermon today, so hopefully you see it. Hebrews 10:25 says, there so much the more as you see the day approaching. The Bible talks about a falling away has to happen first. And that falling away is the word apostasy. Do you think churches are in apostasy right now? And again, it seems anecdotal, which means only from what I see, but we talk to a lot of people in this church. We go door to door. We talk to a lot of people, and it's just kind of crazy. I think we're in at least a falling away. So bring up the next slide if you would. So let's talk about end times. My little graph here, but I'm going to talk about this because I understand that there's some difference of opinion, but here you see this: the first 1,260 days is a time of peace, and that's what people like us get wrong. We call the whole thing the tribulation, and then we get made fun of for calling it the tribulation. The Bible doesn't call this first half the tribulation; it calls it the beginning of sorrows. We call it the tribulation and get but whether you believe the rapture happens here, or over towards here, is kind of irrelevant. See, if we are looking at the rapture over here and we're thinking that Jesus is just going to bail us out because we're pre-trib, That's not the case either. Because the Bible talks about how, here, there will still be tribulation. John 16:33. This is going to be a rough time. It's not going to all of a sudden just be, hey, everything's, cookies, rainbows, and unicorns. It may be. Who knows? And it might be for some people. But the Bible talks about how this will be perilous times. This will be a time of peace and prosperity and all sorts of neat stuff. But when you start, getting it, we'll get back into some of this here in a minute, if you don't mind me using maybe one day we'll get one of those lasers. But we've used a red laser on the TV before, but it doesn't show up. So it's attached to my pistol. So the last thing we want waving around here, right? No, actually we bought one that was a handheld that didn't even show up. So you can go ahead and take that down. Jesus is coming back, and this will be a real event. It will be. And can you imagine just all of a sudden one day, no matter what the time is, all of a sudden, and by the way, I have now come to the conclusion, thanks to, I'm not sure if it was Simon or Tristan bringing up a good point Wednesday night, I'm now of the opinion, I think I've, because I was always trying to figure out, rapture happens, somehow we're spiritually supposed to be coming back and meeting our body and all that sort. I now believe when we get raptured, just there's no body left. Our body is changed from physical to spiritual on the way up. And which makes no sense to me why that has to happen if you're in the grave, but it does. Anyways, but if you're alive at the rapture, you will be taken. However, watch this. Every generation had people who thought that Jesus would return in their lifetime. Every one of them. Adventism, or Millerism, as it's been called. Adventism, that would be your Seventh-day Adventists, has its roots in teachings of a Baptist preacher by the name of William Miller. He first predicted the second advent of Jesus Christ would occur before March 21st, 1844. Did that happen? No. All right. When this date passed, the new date was predicted, of course. Again, the date passed, and another Millerite, Samuel Snow, derived the date of October 22nd, 1844. The unfulfillment of these predictions has been named the Millerite Great Disappointment. And that's straight off of Wikipedia. We are not without guilt here. The Anabaptist Church, a lot of them thought that it was going to be 1533. The Anglican Church said it was going to be in the 1500s. Assemblies of God Church said no later than 1935. Calvary Chapel founder of the Calvary Chapel system, Chuck Smith, established in the book End Times that the book was in 1979, that it was going to be 1981 based on when Jesus said, this generation shall not pass. This generation shall not pass is not talking about the reforming of Israel up until the time. We are now well beyond a generation since that happened in 1949. Well past it. When Jesus is talking about this generation shall not pass, he's talking about the people who are alive at the time of what the events he's talking about. That generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Or you could also take it, if we're talking about plan A, plan B, when Jesus said that there'll be some that even here they'll see the kingdom of heaven, that is when that happened at the, what's the name of that called? Thank you, Transfiguration. So the same viewpoint was published by Pastor Hal Lindsey in his widely published book, The Late Great Planet Earth. The Lutheran Church, even Martin Luther himself, said this: in 1590, the gospel would be preached to all nations, and a wonderful unity shall be achieved. The last days would then be close at hand. Of course, we know, because we open our Bibles, that the gospel was preached to the end of the world in Acts chapter 2 by the people that Chris talked about during Sunday school, who went back out, because under every nation, those Jews went back and preached the gospel. Now, it could be happening again, who knows, but that was fulfilled in Acts chapter 2. And then we have, Presbyterian Church between 1650 and 1695. And I could rattle off a whole list. Jehovah's Witnesses, 1874, 1966, 1977, and the list goes on and on with that group. And then we have the most recent. How about Harold Camping? And after his last failed one, we're all like, just turn off the radio, go somewhere else, be done with it. You have been wrong too many times. See, we don't know the time, we don't know the hour, and we can't make that prediction. Although I will say 2038. You can laugh at that. Even though we don't know the time, there were things that were not possible before these, and I've given some of these things in the sermon a year and a half ago. I've added to the list. And so here we go. If you take notes or you can just listen, remember this will be on both Facebook and YouTube. YouTube is public, so it's not something you have to have an account for, and you can go back and watch these. So I'm going to give you a list of 9 things that were not possible until now. Because even if you thought, if I was alive during World War II, I would have thought, this whole Hitler thing, killing off I would have thought the end was nigh. But however, there's some things all throughout Scripture that just clearly were not possible at the time that are now. Of course, number 1, and we're going to go to the oldest one, the ability to destroy entire cities. I have a lesson. I'll pull up and try to find it so that you can. Jeremiah 15:51 talk about a destroying wind, arrows of fire. Talks about going over borders, the northernmost borders, a mingled people, burn with fire, destroying wind. Talks about the hindermost nations. I believe Jeremiah 15:51 is talking about America. However, I do have pastor friends that would disagree with me on that. Revelation 18 talks about Babylon's being destroyed in an hour. And personal opinion, you can notice I'm prefacing with personal opinion. We can talk about the Bible being 100% correct, but however, my opinion is that Revelation chapter 18 is talking about America. But if it happens 100 years from now, who knows if we're even still going to be around? I don't know. But Revelation 18 verse 10 says this: standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, "Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. For in 1 hour so great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this city?" This was not possible until 1944. And so, again, 44, that was a long time ago. And again, it says Babylon, but it's, Babylon's been destroyed, so it's not like it'll come out and say exactly who it is. But anyways, that is kind of old hat. Blowing up entire cities, that's a yesterday thing. Let's start talking about now things. How about that? Number 2, instant worldwide communication. So let's go back to the slide real quick, and I'm going to explain. First off, so see here the 2 witnesses. The 2 witnesses, this box actually should stretch the entire. Their ministry is 1,260 days. The Bible says that here in Revelation chapter 11. We're just not going to read it today. So when we read this, we're talking about these 2 people right here. And so go ahead and go to Revelation 11, verse 7. And so the first few verses of Revelation chapter 11 talk about the 2 witnesses, talk about the things they did. It even goes as far as talking about they could breathe fire, stop rain. But look here in verse 7. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them. So this is talking about the first beast, which is the one we refer to as the Antichrist, not the false prophet. So this is Antichrist, remember the Antichrist, false prophet, and Satan as the unholy trinity there. And shall overcome them and kill them. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. And they have and notice that the Revelation is referring to Jerusalem as Sodom and Egypt. That's not a good thing. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their bodies 3 days and a half. Now that portion was possible with TVs, satellite, and all that. In 3.5 days you could see something going on the other side of the planet. And shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry. And now watch this, send gifts one to another. We talk about, the vaccine being maybe a precursor of something else. And that's fine. Precursor means it's not the same thing. And so, then we just have a different opinion on something like that. It's fine. You don't want to get one, don't get one. You want to get one, get one. I don't think it's an issue. But however, so send gifts one to another. They're going to send gifts all over the planet with 3.5 days from seeing it to being delivered. So now if you have the same thought process, now you're going to stop using Amazon. And who of us is going to do that? Right? And, local businesses are shooting themselves in the foot. If you're going to make it for me, make it nearly impossible for me to go shop in your store. Can I take a little side note here? Do y'all mind?
Nope.
Just, yes. I believe in shopping local. I want to use a local business as much as possible. I would much rather go to the place on Main Street for a hardware store than, say, Home Depot or Lowe's. But you know what? By the time I get to a project and I drive over there, they're closed at 5 o'clock. And yet they have good things happen to those that shop local. Won't be open past 5. Anyways, but the more we make it difficult to shop local, the more people go to Amazon. And people don't put that together and all of a sudden wonder why and get mad at Jeff Bezos because he's a multi-billionaire. And at least he is diverting his energies into, just flying up into space and dropping back down to the planet instead of trying to control everything about our lives. I will give him that. But notice their sin gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, so the spirit of life from God entered into them and stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. Snapchat, Facebook, all sorts of things. Right? Do you realize I could say the wrong thing right now? And because this is going out and about, half the country could know my name by tomorrow. I was editing. I've been a little nostalgic lately, and so I had my old home movies digitized. So it's been fun to go through. I've been posting or putting them up on YouTube because I don't want to take up a bunch of room on my computer. But seeing some of the things we did 20 years ago, and not we. I edited out one of our sailors who then was a worker who's kind of in the ministry down in Texas right now. But if I were to leave it on there, he would actually be on part of cancel culture. It would, and I'm lucky. I'm glad I found. Not that anybody's going to be looking through it. Nobody's going to watch 2 hours of sailors playing football, flag football. Only those of us that might have been there would do it. But he comes on there. Well, I guess I didn't mention a name. And he's full on blackface with mud and speaking with an accent. I'm like, oh, you can't be doing that. So luckily found it and deleted it. But it's interesting. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all that. Anyone on the planet can watch this broadcast right now. Imagine that. And that's something that's only been possible in the last few years. How about this? Number 3, economy control. It's surprisingly how few people it took to crash our economy last year. Just like it was nothing. Just a couple, no laws were passed. Just a couple people said things. And those things were said, and that ended up. But I want you to know this. Revelation, actually, no, let's not do that screen yet. Revelation chapter 6, look at verses 5 and 6. And and this is Revelation. This is the third seal. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. So that's the economy. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. So what there is, we see price control. We see buying control. But now watch this, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. So hey, the rich people can still have whatever they want. The rest of us are going to be controlled. Are you seeing any of that going on right now? The oil and the wine, fine. Was that up there? Okay. And so, there's a different set of rules for us commoners than the higher ups. Have you noticed that? And so if we commit a crime, we're going to do the time. Higher ups can do all sorts of neat things and just get away with it. And that's going to continue. A cashless society, which I think eventually is inevitable. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to go from an income tax. I think it's eventually going to be, and this is just my opinion, I didn't read this anywhere. I think what they're eventually going to do is they're just going to tax the movement of money. And so, something gets transferred from here to here, I will take, like credit card transaction fees. Any money that moves, that we're going to take part of that. And so we won't see it. We won't think anything of it. And we're paying half of our income without even thinking about it. When was the last time you had cash in your... Well, actually, there's some of you that might carry cash. I don't know. But, we talk about digital currency, things of that, like that. Back when we received all of our stimulus checks, that was all done by direct deposit. And if you had to get a check, I think one of our kids couldn't get theirs until they got the ability to get direct deposit. The government in the last couple of years was using grants and executive orders to shut down certain parts of our economy. One guy stands up and says, hey, you can't have that oil pipeline right there. And all of a sudden, 10,000 people lose a job like that. No big deal. Yeah. And if we want to get political, then we'll point out that he also okayed ones that were for other people. Just for some reason, the press just... Okay, we're going to get to that. Matter of fact, it's our next point. Number 4, thought and information control. See, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to sound like all this, but there's some realities here. Thought and information control. And we have verified the power of the press. We have verified it. We have, there are... Really? Now, Judd, you're telling everybody you don't even have a cell phone.
That's right.
Judd will pick up his wife's phone to text you a meme because he doesn't want it coming from his phone, so you have his number. Verified. Judd has a cell phone. And and somebody has...
It was God, he said speed it up. I was going to say it's probably the government call.
I'm going to get to that. Do we have tinfoil in the kitchen? And there are 5 basic companies that own all media outlets. So the message is quit being ignorant and obey the technocrats, right? And so then the Bible talks about a strong delusion that they should believe a lie. Now, I believe the strongest delusion doesn't happen until after the rapture, but, who knows? Revelation 20 says this in verse 3, and cast him into a bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him. This is talking about during the millennium, that he should deceive the nations no more. Entire nations being deceived till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. 2 Timothy 3:13, but evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Now, here's where my mindset always was. I give people the benefit of the doubt and see that being deceived part. I don't assume everybody is, and neither do you, but assume that everybody's evil. But I think there are a lot more evil people than I even give this world credit for. And so, by the way, speaking of technology and information control, what are you all going to do when this new telescope finds evidence of intelligent life somewhere? How can any of us verify it? It's funny. They blame us for faith, but people are going to be jumping on that. Oh, you see, they found evidence. Well, have you seen it? Are you going to go, like something can't be manipulated to look like anything. I don't know. Anyways, number 5. You ready? A world with diminished borders. We're moving towards that. Jeremiah 50 and verse 37, in conjunction with the aforementioned nuclear war, talks about all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. We have in some countries a mutual currency. We have entire continents with the same currency, and even in this room, we know of currencies that are tradable and usable anywhere. We in America are the great melting pot, and I believe that'll eventually go further beyond our borders. And it's even more so with the advent of internet, social media. I can go online and find somebody from Egypt and talk to them tomorrow, or talk to them this afternoon. It's just kind of crazy. But it's in going back, and I can, if you ask me, I can send you a link to Rockefeller's 1995 video. It's right there, and he says it pretty plainly. But he talks about international interdependence and the window that's open. So a man that could go buy 5 Lamborghinis and be like you and I going buying a stick of gum, it becomes about control is what their thrill becomes being. Number 6, you ready? Global digital ID. I talked about this a year and a half ago, but however, I was not even then aware of how deep this has gone. In India, this is already a thing. I did not know that. They pretty much, it's all about biometrics, and it's sold as, we're talking about information superhighway. It's already in place for some Asian countries. Bill Gates touts the positive side to it, and he talks about medical records. If it can be tied to you. Voting. It's interesting how important voting with ID becomes when we're talking about digital ID. Now all of a sudden we have to have it. Otherwise it's racist to ask for it. But he talks about efficiency, and he said this: instead of a bunch of paperwork, you can be served more easily. So you can be served easily will be, I think, part of the selling point. And what point are we on? 6? Oh, imagine being, somebody. I think personally, when people walk up and line up for the mark of the beast, it won't be something where people are being fooled to take. I think they're going to be willingly. They know what they're doing, and they know exactly what's going on. And that's why I think, well, is this? And then I think it comes that time, it won't be a question. Number 8. Matter of fact, speaking of that, let's go ahead and now get to the next point. Number 8, trackable insertables.
7.
Did I say 7? Oh, I missed 7 completely. All right, number 7. You ready? Ability to turn your switch off. Now, this is where it gets fun. And this is where I was going to insert all sorts of different videos and stuff. But let's talk about reputation score. China has that right now. Do you know that you all have a reputation score? Now, it's with a civilian website. It's not with a government website. But you know what the Chinese do is they give you a score based on what you do, what you don't do, and you can just be turned off from society. Do we have something up here yet? Okay. You can just all of a sudden be just clicked off. Just done. So I looked up reputation scores. And so let's look at this real quick. Mine on this side is a 2.15. I had to go find myself, but and I didn't go searching for everybody. And this is just a civilian website. This is not a government thing. But to think that somebody thought about this and then the government hasn't would be folly. And so now look here, court records. Do we have court records? Have I ever been arrested? If you looked at this site, who do I talk to about getting that court record thing mix up, taken off? Yeah, okay. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next person. So mine is 2.15. Let's go to Matt Burkett. 1.1? I think they got this one right. And again, court records. He was arrested for soloing on private property one time. I wonder if that's talking about that. But so let's go ahead and get the whole staff treatment here. Somebody redeems us, and that's Chris Rose. So look over here. 2.79. Woohoo! But you come over here, and we're not going to come over here. There is no come over here. And
No court records.
No court records. Now, none of this information is correct, but when I was looking at this, Chris, it lists all the addresses you've had since you were married. For me, it lists all of my addresses except for one. It knew my phone number, it knew my email address, it knows everything.
Net worth is graded and
$2.
Where does it say net worth?
but then it's cut off.
Yeah. You're going to take that off there. But what is cancel culture today? You say the wrong thing, you are cut off, your career's over, you're done. Now, I think the more we get into positions where cancel culture can't affect us is a good thing. But all of a sudden, somebody just somewhere can just all of a sudden click and you're done. Let's bring up the slide of the American Legion. This is the American Legion Facebook page. And because I used this as our profile picture, I think, they unpublished our page. It's not visible to the public. Now imagine if my lifeblood was, advertising through Facebook, and it's the American Legion. So none of those people have Facebook, nor do any of them, what's the internets? Facebooks and all that. But this page has been unpublished. Why? And notice that. You appealed this decision Monday, January 10th. What's the date right now? 30th. 20 days ago, I appealed this to get it back online. Who do I talk to? Who do I send it to? So if this was something that was, let's say, something tied to my bank account, oh, you're done. Who do I talk to? It's now been 20 days. So the question becomes, now what? All right, let's keep on going. But trackable insert. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13. Well, okay, first pull up the slide. It should be next. And I keep forgetting, if I stand with my back towards the camera, then, you have people online, clicking all the likes when, they see, But anyways, so right now we're going to be talking about Revelation 13, which is in the beast cycle. When we talked about the seal cycle and the third seal and the black horse, what's happening though is that's happening at the same time as what we're about to talk about right here. It's not different events. They're all tied in together. When we see Revelation as cyclical, we see these things being tied in together and working at the same time. Now let's go to Revelation 13 and verse 16. It says here, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond." If you hear Bill Gates talk about the vaccine and how they wanted to get it to actually every single person on the planet, and not just that one, but all of them. And so you can see how then it's going to be then with this trackable insertable. "To receive a mark in their right hand." See, that's what's different than, say, years ago. Because you can remember those old pictures and chick tracts where people were walking around with barcodes on their heads? And you're like, ooh, that looks scary. It isn't even that. There's no such thing. It's not on. It's in. Which, by the way, some new versions still say on instead of in. But notice it says there, receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man may buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now, the cancel culture is getting us here. You see, and notice it doesn't say trade. It only says buy and sell. You'll be stuck in a barter state. You'll be stuck with, hey, I have some food. What do you have? Well, I have some toilet paper. And so going back and forth. RFID chip plants, in the news. It was a couple years ago, a Wisconsin company is the first to offer microchip technology to its employees. And you can find it. They have them inserted here. They wave their hand in front of the door. Beep, lets them in. This is old technology now. A recent crime was solved because they determined that the perpetrator and the victim's phones were in close proximity at the time of the crime. Interesting. Matter of fact, it was that shooting down in Texas. They figured out who sold the guy the gun because they found out that this certain guy, his cell phone was at the same proximity as the shooters the day before. So they went and looked at this guy. And so then now we're all carrying him around. So imagine how convenient. It's going to be nothing. Do you remember growing up, Joe, Angela, where we were worried about, you hear a couple clicks on the phone. You're like, am I being wiretapped, right? Remember that? Am I being wiretapped? Now we ask our wiretap for chocolate chip cookie recipes. It's the craziest thing. But this was not possible until the last couple of years. Come on, Elon Musk is now, that's like old stuff. He's talking about how you can have a music streaming service implanted into your head. Yeah. Can you imagine being hacked and rickrolled? Never going to give you up. But you'll hear it in such clarity because it's tapped right into your brain. I kid you not, this is a thing. Somebody looks surprised. Do you know about this, right? Yeah, okay. He's talking about, but imagine speaking and debating, and somebody doesn't know you have that in there, and you have somebody off stage, nothing in your ears can give you all the available information that's available, and all of human history can now be audibly uploaded into your brain while you're talking, and you can hear it. I'm not talking about uploading like the data's there, like you're storing it like a computer. Hear it. I mean, that... Yeah, the voices in your head. You already have enough of those, right? Well, now we can have somebody to have a conversation with. But it's just cochlear implants is an old technology now. It's something that deaf people can have put on the side of their head. There's an implant on the inside, and it's a digital signal now sent to your brain through some nerves and stuff. It's just, this is old technology. How about this? Number 9, possibly, and we confirmed this morning, surveillance. Remember, like I said, don't talk to strangers. Remember that back in the day?
You didn't give us a...
Trackable insertables. For the love of God. Can I have your permission to preach a sermon, Angela? Trackable insertables, number 8. Number 9, surveillance. Remember, it used to be, don't talk to strangers. Now, strangers are the only people we talk to. Luke chapter 12, look at verses 2 and 3. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Therefore, whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light, and that which ye have spoken in the ear and closet shall be proclaimed upon the housetops. What if one day everything that you've said will all of a sudden be used as a weapon against you? Imagine all the conversations that you've had. Judd, are you just going to give up now?
I'm being married.
Oh. Tink. We're going to remember that one. Okay, imagine this. Imagine that every conversation that you've had that you thought was completely private, your phone heard it, and can now be brought up to that person you're talking about. There's not a person in this room that would be innocent on this. Not one. Imagine every website you've ever looked up, all of a sudden can be shown to anybody. Interesting. That would divide very friendships. You said what? Well, it's out of context. Well, it doesn't matter. You said it. And we're all guilty of this. And your phone was sitting right there when you said it. And well, that's not how it works. Then how come I can talk about something and all of a sudden it's an advertisement the next time I open my phone? Surveillance. All right. However, when will all this happen? And I want to get to the point of the sermon. The point of the sermon wasn't about what we just talked about. Again, let's pull up the slide here. Whether, pre-trib, mid-trib, wrath, whatever the case is, all of this is irrelevant. Because all throughout human history, there's been calamity. All throughout human history, there's been shortage, famine, people being attacked, all these different things. This really is irrelevant when it comes to the end of this sermon here. The end of this sermon is an encouragement for you. I haven't talked about this much. I have always had at least some sort of backup plan for, and it may not have been very well involved, but I did have one. But here's some questions that I want you to answer for yourself. Notice the Bible says, you can go ahead and take that back off, as you see the day approaching. However, what about disaster? John chapter 16, verse 33 says that we will have tribulation. We need a plan. We've become too dependent, and that's what they're looking for. When we did the Kingdom's Bible study, the whole problem with the Kingdom's Bible study was that all of the kingdom of heaven was under one man, and when everything becomes under one man, that's when your problems really start. It's never been pulled off, but the Antichrist, by the way, will pull it off. Even FEMA says that you should have a 72-hour kit, so this isn't about being a prepper. This isn't about being a conspiracy theorist. Even FEMA says it. But here's the key. Write this down. Don't write it down, whatever. Just remember it. Don't panic. Don't panic. That's the key to everything. If you're forced to panic, you're going to make mistakes. I originally said we need to have plans to answer the following questions. I crossed out my sermon we and put you. You need to have a plan to answer the following questions. Are you ready? Don't write these down. You just think about it. Well, you can write them down if you want. Number one, if the food supply is cut off, how and what will you eat? We just saw panicked buying on toilet paper. Okay, so it's toilet paper. We can figure out other things, right? But what if it is food? What if it, and right now, with our lovely leaders, Biden, how do you say that guy's name? Buttigieg? That guy. And, they're trying to consider maybe somewhere else to put him since he can't, pull off his job that he's doing very well. But, we have ships just sitting out on the ocean. Imagine if that was something you actually needed. Now, it's products usually from China and somewhere else, so it's not something we, need definitely right away. But empty shelves are all around our country. What are you going to do? And by the way, here comes a tough decision for you. If somebody else doesn't have a plan and you do, and you say have a 3-month stock of food, and somebody comes to you in panic, what do? Do you give up of yours, not knowing when it's going to end? My answer is my family comes first. Prepare now. But anyways, number 2. If power is cut off, how will you have power for some necessities? Number 3, if currency is cut off, how will you function? If your little switch is flipped, how will you get by? Do you have something you trade? Do you have something that you could barter? If it comes to a point of no buying and no selling, do you have something else you could do? So let's just get off all of that. How about this? Number 4, if calamity or disaster hits, where will you meet? Which one's louder? Sorry, I don't usually kick that. If calamity or disaster hits, where we meet, where we go? Is it back to your own house? Luckily, I think with our area, I think that we are going to, if it's something it's just something you have to think of different scenarios that are going to happen. How much time do we have? And the question then becomes, how will you get there? Number 5, if communication is cut off, then how will you be in touch? I remember back in the day, I bought a couple of shortwave radios. I'm not sure what they'll do, but if cell phone towers ever cut off, I need to have a way to communicate with somebody, and those just sit there. Now, kids sometimes come play with them, and I get, where are they? Because I just want to know where they are, all the time. I have a certain bag that I have in my safe. I have, these other different things going on. Then number 6, then how will you defend yourself through all of this? Even Jesus himself said, by a sword. Jesus is all about love and peace. Yeah, but he said by a sword. And so self-defense is something we should be doing. Now, I have 4 more lines right here. This will just take a couple minutes. Again, I'm not trying to scare you. None of this should scare you. But the points of the sermon is this: to show that the Bible is accurate, to show that a stage is being set. By the way, notice I'm using the word a, not the. A stage is being set. It could be that we have a spiritual revival and things get reversed and we start heading back in the right direction. The Bible talks about the only way out of certain calamity is humility towards God and turning towards God. Do you see our country doing that right now? Neither do I. And then point number 3 is asking, do you have a plan to be prepared? What are you going to do? What are these things? My plans change and have changed even recently, and but it's up to you. It's up to you to find out what your plan is. I can't prepare for you. Nobody else can prepare for you. There's strength in numbers, but our church isn't a cult, and we're not going to move all together to some other area. You are responsible for your family. I remember several years ago, not having the church bus next to my house has been a wonderful thing. It used to be parked there. So Mount Pisgah Baptist Church, everybody saw it. Have some crazy stop by. But there's people that came by and tried to get me to buy land in Montana. When the 6th seal hits, we're going to be up there. And I looked at him plainly and he said, when the 6th seal hits, there's nothing about Montana that can protect you from it. When the sky is being rolled back as a scroll, oh, good thing I'm in Montana. What's that?
Big sky.
Oh yeah, big sky. You get to see the scroll even further. The 6th seal has nothing. There's none of us are gonna make it through that. Frankly, I don't think we'll be here for it. As a matter of fact, I don't think anywhere where you stand in the time of the rapture, none of us believe that we'll be here for the 6th seal. And the 6th seal is pretty much, it's over, and Jesus is coming back. But it's in Revelation chapter 6, which proves to me that also Revelation is cyclical. But again, my purpose isn't to scare you today, and bring up pictures and videos and stuff like that. You can do your own research. But the thing is, regardless of our view on end times, we need to have a plan. What if an earthquake hits? What if these different things happens? What do we do? And there should be at least a small plan in your head that other people maybe know about, or whatever the case is, that you can do these things. Protect yourself, feed yourself, drink water, and maybe have a first aid kit. I don't know, whatever the case is. But you can Google and YouTube those things till you bored to death. So that is the point of the sermon. I hope that's helpful to you today. And that should also be encouraging to you. Having a plan is encouraging. It could only be an earthquake, and Jesus' return might be still 1,000 years off. If it is, then I misunderstand Scripture almost completely when it comes to this stuff, but that's entirely possible as well. So I hope that's helpful to you. Let's go ahead.